Hey, this is Jaskar and Sandhu with Baaz. You're listening to our newest podcast, Punjab Power Play. Now, Punjabi politics can be intimidating, irrespective of where you are in the world. You can be in Punjab, you can be outside of it. It's tough to kind of make sense of it all at times, which is why we started this podcast. And we also started it because we have an eye towards the Punjab Assembly elections that are supposed to happen in February of next year, but early next year, where we are going to see a lot of important issues debated. Right, whether it's the farmers' protests, whether your Bantik issues, long-standing issues with the central government, it's going to be an interesting one. Probably one of the most interesting in recent memory. That's why we have two co-hosts driving the conversation, two guys who really know Punjab, Jazz Oberoi and Amaan Bali. Now, I don't necessarily have to introduce you to these two. They're regular contributors to Baaz. They're very active on Twitter and in Punjabi media, and they're guys who understand the background. And so we're really excited about the show. Really excited because we're gonna have guests from all major parties from the Punjabi political spectrum. We're going to have folks who watch Chandigarh and watch Punjabi politics very closely. It's hopefully going to be very illuminating for people like me and others like me who are interested in what's going on in Punjabi politics, but may not necessarily know everything or even the basics. In our first show, we're going to kind of lay the foundation here, kind of introduce the topic, and then from here on forward, every other week, we're going to talk about the more details around whether it's specific issues, specific individual players, kind of who and what to watch. The first segment of this episode will be looking at the historical kind of legacies that drive political narratives in Punjab. And the second part is kind of fast forwarding to today. What is important right now? What are the kind of foundational issues of this election cycle? I hope you guys enjoy it, and I'll talk to you at the end of this thing.
Hello, Sat Sri Akal everybody. Welcome to the very first episode of Punjab Power Play. This is Amaan Bali, your co-host, along with Jazz Oberoi. And I have been talking about Punjab politics, history of Punjab, with more or less the Sikhi narrative and in context of the current events and everything. I have currently authored a book which is still in the press on farmers' protest, and I'm also a political commentator on a lot of other issues. So in this podcast series, we'll be following the Punjab elections and everything Punjab.
Sat Sri Akal ji ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ. As Amaan said, I'm your co-host, Jazz Oberoi, a socio-political commentator. I would say from the last 16 years or so. Earlier settled in India, born and brought up in Punjab, and then moved to Canada in 2010. I write opinion pieces for multiple outlets based out of India and Canada. So News Laundry, Quint, Wire, and then a lot of it for Baaz. And I'm really, really excited to host this podcast from Baaz called Punjab Power Play. So yeah, really excited. ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਤੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਪਹਿਲਾ ਐਪੀਸੋਡ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜੀ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ.
So I think Jazz, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਿ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਹੀ ਆ, ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ elections ਨੇ, because majorly this podcast will be concentrating on Punjab elections. So Punjab elections are the most followed elections in diaspora, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ UK 'ਚ ਹੋਏ, Canada 'ਚ ਹੋਏ, US 'ਚ ਹੋਏ. Every event in Punjab is obviously followed by diaspora, and elections, it's no exception. So I think it becomes all the very important then to put a little historical context of what is happening, what has happened, obviously. And I think this podcast will be doing that exactly.
ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਜੀ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਹੀ ਕਿਹਾ ਡਾਇਸਪੋਰਾ ਦੀ ਇੰਟਰਸਟ ਬਾਰੇ ਐਂਡ ਵੀ ਰੀਸੈਂਟਲੀ ਹੈਡ ਆਰ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਦਾ ਫੈਡਰਲ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਤੇ ਵੈਸੇ ਹੀ ਬੰਦਾ ਪੁੱਛ ਲੈਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਕਈਆਂ ਤੋਂ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ what are you thinking whom are you voting for ਤੇ 1 ਮਿੰਟ 1.5 ਮਿੰਟ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਕੇ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਪੋਲਿਟਿਕਸ ਦੇ everybody comes back to Punjab politics. That's that's the interest that people still have, and I'm talking about people who've been
I'm
in.
sure they make those comparisons ਜਿਵੇਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਉਹ ਲੀਡਰ ਆ ਉੱਥੇ ਉਹ ਲੀਡਰ ਆ.
ਬਿਲਕੁਲ 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 and I'm talking about people ਜਿਹੜੇ 50-60 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ they've been here. So we still have interest and we are really excited ਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਤੋਂ as you are on the ground view ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆ ਸਕੀਏ ਐਂਡ ਆਪਾਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਡਾਇਸਪੋਰਾ ਵੀ ਤੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਤੇ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦੇ ਬਾਕੀ ਥਾਵਾਂ ਤੇ ਵੀ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੌਕਾ ਦਈਏ ਕਿ they understand what's happening and what would happen in the next few months. So yeah, please go ahead. I think ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੋਗੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦਾ historical perspective.
Right. I think before we go any further into this, it's very important to ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਦੱਸਣਾ ਕਿ ਪੰਜਾਬ 'ਚ political parties ਜਾਂ political spectrum ਕਿਹੋ ਜਿਹਾ ਰਿਹਾ. Because unlike all of the states of India, Punjab has not been it's never been a monolith. We've
ਹਾਂਜੀ
had religious parties, we've had Congress doing the major chunk of, rule in the past. We've had partition, we've had green revolution. So Punjab has always been, it has always had an exciting history of elections as well. There have been election boycotts as well. So in order to take up this one, so मैं पहला सब तो पहला था जिन्हें भी political parties पंजाब च रही ने, चाहे उसी I'll be starting majorly from 1970s onwards. So and then we'll go on to the later phases. So when we discuss the current elections, आज दी date च ਅਸੀਂ we look at the parties, चाहे पंजाब च main contender ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ, we look at Congress party, we look at Akali Dal, Shromani Akali Dal, Badal, and then we look at BJP, and then we have a fairly new party, which obviously is not so new, but it's a new party when it comes to Punjab and places other than Delhi. So Aam Aadmi Party and few other independent people and other parties, regional parties. But agar historically ਅਸੀਂ ਪੰਜਾਬ the elections ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖੀਏ, so this has not been the case. The fight is always between the Akalis and the Congress. Major fight ਜਿੰਨੀ ਪੰਜਾਬ 'ਚ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ Akalis and Congress 'ਚ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ. The other parties, ਜਿਹੜੇ remnants ਨੇ BJP ਦੇ, BJP ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ offshoot ਹੈ, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਜਨਸੰਘ ਹੋਏ ਜਾਂ ਹੋਰ ਬਾਕੀ parties ਹੋਏ, because they obviously grew much bigger after 1984. ਉਹ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਇੰਨੀ ਪਹੁੰਚ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਜਨਸੰਘ ਹੋਏ. They also made they came to power in center as well, but that was not for the longer terms. They had unstable governments, they had coalition governments which didn't really last long. So major parties ਪੰਜਾਬ 'ਚ ਅਗਰ ਅਸੀਂ 1980s ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰੀਏ, 1970s ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰੀਏ, so we have Congress, which obviously dominated a large part of Punjab's history, and whether that's for good or that's for bad, which obviously we'll assess later. And second, we had Akali Dal. And when I say Akali Dal, normally people understand that Akali Dal means Prakash Singh Badal and Sukhbir Singh Badal in terms of present context. But Akali Dal has been a big party. It started from Master Tara Singh, then it factioned away into Sant Fateh Singh faction, and then it factioned into later factions, चाहे वो तलवंडी faction होए, तोड़ा faction होए, Barnala faction, and all these factions. They've had all these parties, all these chunks of Akali Dal had their share of power in Punjab. And then obviously we had some smaller factions which sided and which sided with the political demand, which sided with the demand for sovereignty and demand for free land for Sikhs, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਮਾਨ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਜਾਂ ਹੋਰ ਬਾਕੀ ਜਿੰਨੀਆਂ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲਸ ਬਣੀਆਂ ਫਿਰ. And then later on, there were many, unification attempts of combining all these Akali Dals into one Akali Dal as well. So, agar ਅਸੀਂ Akali Dal ਦੀ history ਚ ਦੇਖੀਏ, Jess,
हाँ जी.
So the thing has always been, these people, I shouldn't be saying this, but Akali Dal has always been deciding its political course based on what's happening in the Panthik world and what's happening in the Sikh world, you know. चाहे वो starting the point तो होए, because most people would be surprised that Akali Dal Badal today is very, very, moderate and secular. चाहे a lot of people must have heard Sukhbir Singh Badal even saying hallelujah in one of the speeches. But
बिल्कुल
this
जी.
wasn't always the case. Akali Dal has, even Prakash Singh Badal has been very, 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 very openly saying that demand for Sikh land is what his party will stand for always. And so all this changed. All this changed from 1995 and 1992 onwards. So it's very important to understand the context in which the Sikh parties, or let's say the Panthik parties, so-called Panthik parties, they kept their stand in times, changing times.
ਸੋ ਇੱਥੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਵੀ ਇੱਕ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਅਮਾਨ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਇੱਥੇ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਦੀ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਫੈਕਸ਼ਨਸ ਦੀ, ਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਹੁਣ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਐਗਜ਼ਿਸਟ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ, ਤਾਂ has the different factions broken down and now they exist or don't exist, and ਇਹ ਕਹਿ ਸਕਦੇ ਕਿ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਸ਼ ਸਿੰਘ ਬਾਦਲ ਵਾਲੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੁਣ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਐਗਜ਼ਿਸਟ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ, that has been the faction that has prevailed from 1970s to today?
So, not exactly prevailed. So, let me just also give a little context on this. Uh, the most prominent and the strongest Akali Dal that to ever exist was Akali Dal Longowal. Okay, so Akali Dal Longowal has been very moderate in its approach. It was the only Sikh faction or the Akali faction which went on to talk with Rajiv Gandhi, and Longowal signed on an accord which is popularly known as Rajiv Longowal Accord. That accord obviously never got full, it never materialized. A lot of people don't know that. And you must have seen a lot of Congress people, Congress handles, even, boasting about that Congress brought stability in Punjab by signing a Kali Longowal Accord. But none of them ever talks about कि वो accord ਤਾਂ ਕਦੇ ਪੂਰਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ.
The piece about ਦੂਰ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ. I think Longowal was assassinated because of that, right? Signing that.
Yes. Because when Longowal signed that accord, and 26 January 1986, the date, see, when that accord was supposed to be fulfilled, Rajiv Gandhi had assured Longowal that by that date, this accord will be fulfilled and Punjab promise will be delivered to Longowal. So Longowal went back to his Sikhs, Longowal went back to Morchas and told Sikhs that he has solved the Punjab problem. Obviously, people rejected him. Panthik circles obviously rejected him. The factions, Babbar Khalsas, the Panthik committees, and all those people obviously rejected him outrightly because, as Sant General Singh Khalsa Pindrawale ji always used to believe that these accords will not solve anything. So ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਉਹੀ belief ਸੀ ਕਿ accords ਇਹ ਤਾਂ sell out document ਆ. So it's very important to understand what I'm going to say next. Due to this stand by the Panthik groups, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਵੀ radical groups ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ for example ਅਗਰ ਕਹਿ ਲਈਏ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ stand is accord ਦੇ against ਸੀ. So because of that stand of these people, the Akalis of that time, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਲੋਂਗੋਵਾਲ ਵਾਲੇ, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਬਾਦਲ ਵਾਲੇ ਹੋਣ, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਤਲਵੰਡੀ ਵਾਲੇ ਹੋਣ, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਟੋਰਾ ਵਾਲੇ ਹੋਣ, these Akalis were also not really open to supporting the Longowal Accord, because if they supported the Longowal Accord, they would lose the Panthik support. So this is always happening. This is what I was trying to tell you, that these parties have always sided with the Sikh emotions and decided their future course of what their political journey would be. So what they did, even Badal openly said that this is a sellout document of Sikhs and we are not supporting this. But अगर तुसी आगे जाके देखो तो ऐसे पार्टी नाल उन्होंने फिर तो जब बाद चो समझौते भी कर ले, but what is important to understand here, that Akali Dal has always gauged the Panthik emotion, ਉਸ ਇਮੋਸ਼ਨ ਨੂੰ ਗੌਜ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵੀ ਸਟ੍ਰੈਟਜੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ, ਪੋਲੀਟੀਕਲ ਸਟ੍ਰੈਟਜੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਡਿਵਾਈਜ਼ ਕੀਤਾ, ਉਸ ਤੇ ਹੀ ਚੱਲੇ ਸੀ. ਸੋ that question of yours, do these factions exist now, or do all these factions exist now? Most of them, came out in 1995 when Akali Dal Amritsar UAD United Akali Dal was formed. ਉਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਸਾਰਾ ਮੋਡਰੇਟ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਸੀ, ਪੋਸਟ ਨੋਰਮਲ ਸੀ ਜਦ KP ਗਿੱਲ ਪੀਰੀਅਡ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਜਿੰਨੀ ਪੰਜਾਬ 'ਚ ਨੋਰਮਲ ਸੀ ਆ ਗਈ, ਕੁਝ ਫੈਕਸ਼ਨਸ ਤਾਂ ਬੈਨ ਹੋ ਗਈਆਂ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਸਰਬਤ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਹੋਣੇ ਬੰਦ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਸੀ। ਉਸ ਫੈਕਸ਼ਨਸ ਉਹ ਸਰਬਤ ਖਾਲਸਾ 'ਚ ਕਾਂਗਰਸ ਦੇ ਸਟੇਜ ਲੱਗਣੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਨੋਰਮਲ ਸੀ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ, and all these factions which were slightly radical in their approach, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ AISSF ਦੀ ਫੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਹੋਏ, ਪੰਥਕ ਕਮੇਟੀਆਂ ਹੋਣ ਜਾਂ ਹੋਰ ਬਾਕੀ ਹੋਣ, ਸੋ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਟੇਜਸ ਸੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੇ ਬੈਨ ਲੱਗਣਾ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ, ਐਂਡ ਮੇਜਰਲੀ ਸੈਕੂਲਰ ਥਾਟ ਵਾਲੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਸੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਹੀ ਪ੍ਰਮੋਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ। ਸੋ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਡੇਟ 'ਚ ਅਗਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੇਖੀਏ, ਸੋ ਵੀ ਹੈਵ ਦ ਢੀਂਡਸਾ ਫੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਓਬਵੀਅਸਲੀ ਸ਼੍ਰੋਮਣੀ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਬਾਦਲ ਚੋਂ ਹੀ ਨਿਕਲੀ ਹੈ, and it says that Badals have not fulfilled their promises to the Sikh nation, and they have obviously gone astray. ਫਿਰ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਮਾਨ ਹੈ, ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਿ ਬਹੁਤ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਹੀ ਹੈ। ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਮਾਨ should not be confused as an offshoot of ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਬਾਦਲ. It has existed before ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਬਾਦਲ. So it has been the faction which has had the support of Damdami Tiksal at one point. It is the faction which had support of Sanji's brother and Sanji's father. It is one of the faction which has always which has sometimes been also labeled as agents of the government, because none of the funny thing in Sikh politics and Sikh political spectrum is that none of the parties have been aloof from this label ki government the agent ne, because Akali Dal Man also once tried to negotiate with the central government using the Sikh radicals and the Sikh militants. ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਉਹ ਕਨਵਿੰਸ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ 'ਚ ਲੱਗੇ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਐਂਡ ਈਵਨ ਟੂਡੇ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਮਾਨ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਡਿਮਾਂਡਸ ਤੇ ਕਾਇਮ ਆ। ਸੋ ਅਗਰ ਸਿੱਖ ਪੋਲੀਟੀਕਲ ਸਪੈਕਟਰਮ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਡੇਟ 'ਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੇਖੀਏ ਜਸ, so we only have the radical faction which is Akali Dal Man, and rest all we have moderates in terms of Akali Dal Badal and Akali Dal Dindsa.
ਆਈ ਥਿੰਕ ਇੱਥੇ ਫਿਰ ਵਧੀਆ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਡਿਸਕਸ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਕਿ ਦੈਨ ਵਾਟ ਹੈਜ਼ ਬੀਨ ਦ ਟ੍ਰੈਡੀਸ਼ਨਲ ਵੋਟ ਬੈਂਕ, ਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੱਸੀ ਹੈ ਮੋਡਰੇਟ ਹੋ ਚੁੱਕੀ ਹੈ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਬਾਦਲ, ਤਾਂ ਅੱਜ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਵੋਟ ਬੈਂਕ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਦਾ?
ਸੋ ਦ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਬਾਦਲ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸ਼੍ਰੋਮਣੀ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਬਾਦਲ ਹੈ, ਅਗਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਦੇਖੋ ਥੋੜੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ 1995 what Akali Dal did was, Sh੍ਰੋਮਣੀ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ, they fielded from Moga only, they fielded 12 Hindu candidates, which was for the first time. Akali Dal, I'm sure you must have read Aditya Menon's new article where he talks about the Sikh face for the CM, and he talks about the modern context. So it's very good to understand कि आज दी डेट च चाहे 90 normalcy वाले पंजाब च ट्रेडिशनल अकाली दल ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸੀ ਆਪਣਾ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਬਾਦਲ ਸੀ, ਪ੍ਰਕਾਸ਼ ਸਿੰਘ ਬਾਦਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵਾਲਾ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸੈਕੂਲਰ ਹੋਣਾ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰਤਾ ਸੀ, and they also included Hindu faces, and surprisingly there out of the 12 Hindu faces 11 won. So that was a major big, and so Akali vote bank in the post normalcy Punjab has been obviously people who have who call themselves as Sikh, but not the radicals, the moderate Sikhs who were very tired of everything that happened in Punjab for 3 decades. ठीक है, ये ना the vote bank 90s च सी, 90s to 2000s, obviously ਉਹ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਅਸੀਂ next issues discuss ਕਰਾਂਗੇ, and their vote bank has been the Hindu traders. Akali Dal Badal's vote bank has been Hindu traders who obviously felt threatened because there was large amount of Hindu exodus from Punjab, so someone needed to come out and assure them that you are safe in Punjab. So Akali Dal Badal, Prakash Singh Badal has played a major role in restoring some of the temples in Punjab, and you must have heard Sukhbir Singh Badal talk about it in a lot of his speeches, that Prakash Singh Badal restored this temple, restored that temple. He made roads to a lot of temples as well. So Akali Dal Badal, the Prakash Singh Badal, they maintained the secular approach, and they also tried to win the hearts of Hindus. So another jada vote bank hai that went on diversifying. Pehla wo khali Sikh hunde si, and then they started getting Hindu vote bank as well. And Hindu vote bank another jada si wo, you have to understand ki another jada alliance they have always had alliance with Jan Sangh in the normal wala jada Punjab si, normal si to baad wala. So having an alliance with Jan Sangh gave a little bit of confidence to the Hindu voters in Punjab that this party is not really as bad as Congress, and they will think about Hindus because they are hand in glove with the Jan Sangh. Jan Sangh and later BJP, obviously. And Akalis have also had alliance with BSP. Now that also gives them an edge. ਉਹ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਦੀ ਅਗਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰੀਏ ਉਦੋਂ ਇੱਕ edge ਹੁੰਦਾ ਸੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ, because those time a lot of other parties did not really care about the SC community in Punjab. So Akalis were the first party to forge an alliance with BSP at that time. Even though BSP was not as strong at that time, they used to win 1 or 2 seats. But that alliance was symbolic in its nature. So vote bank is diverse. ਅਗਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਕਰੰਟ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰੋ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ vote bank diverse ਹੈ.
ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਆਈ ਥਿੰਕ ਇਹ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਸੀਗਾ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਆਈ ਵੁੱਡ ਸੇ ਮਿਸਕਨਸੈਪਸ਼ਨ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਇਹ, ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਲੀਅਰ ਕਰਨੀ ਕਾਫੀ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅਕਾਲੀਆਂ ਦਾ ਵੋਟ ਬੈਂਕ ਓਨਲੀ ਐਂਡ ਓਨਲੀ ਰੂਰਲ ਹੈ, ਫਿਰ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਓਨਲੀ ਐਂਡ ਓਨਲੀ ਸਿੱਖ ਵੋਟ ਹੈ, ਓਨਲੀ ਐਂਡ ਓਨਲੀ ਪੰਥਕ ਵੋਟ ਹੈ। ਐਕਚੁਅਲੀ ਤਾਂ ਪੰਥਕ ਵੋਟ ਕਾਫੀ ਹੈ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਕੋਲ, ਜੇ ਹੁਣ ਲੇਟਲੀ ਦੇਖੀਏ ਆਪਾਂ। ਅਤੇ ਦੂਜਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਸ਼ਹਿਰਾਂ 'ਚ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਪਤਾ ਹੈ ਹੁਣ ਮਾਲਵਾ ਬੈਲਟ ਹੈ, ਬਠਿੰਡਾ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਦੀ ਐਕਚੁਅਲ ਨੇੜੇ ਹੈ ਬਾਦਲ ਪਿੰਡ, ਉੱਥੇ ਤਾਂ ਟਰੇਡਰ ਕਲਾਸ ਹੈ, ਆੜਤੀਆ ਕਲਾਸ ਹੈ, ਦੇ ਆਰ ਅ ਬਿਗ ਵੋਟਰ ਬੈਂਕ ਫੋਰ ਅਕਾਲੀਜ਼। ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਸਹੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਸਿਗਨੀਫਾਈ ਕੀਤਾ। ਸੋ ਯਾ ਦੈਟ ਇਜ਼ ਗੁੱਡ ਟੂ ਨੋ। ਐਂਡ ਦੈਨ ਹਿਸਟੋਰੀਕਲੀ ਕਾਂਗਰਸ ਦਾ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਦਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਵੋਟ ਬੈਂਕ, ਅਤੇ ਉਹ ਹੁਣ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਕਾਂਗਰਸ 'ਚ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਚੇਂਜ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਉਹ ਦਿਖ ਰਿਹਾ।
ਵੈਰੀ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਕਾਂਗਰਸ ਦਾ ਆਈ ਥਿੰਕ ਉਹ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਚੇਂਜ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਯੂ ਵਿਲ ਬੀ ਬੈਟਰ ਏਬਲ ਟੂ ਐਨਾਲਾਈਜ਼ ਆਫਟਰ ਆਈ ਟੈਲ ਯੂ ਆਲ ਦਿਸ। ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਅਗਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਾਂਗਰਸ ਦਾ ਵੋਟ ਬੈਂਕ ਸਟਾਰਟਿੰਗ ਤੋਂ ਦੇਖੀਏ, ਸੋ ਕਾਂਗਰਸ ਇਜ਼ ਆਲਵੇਜ਼ ਪਲੇਡ ਦ ਗੇਮ ਆਫ ਉਹ ਵੇਟ ਐਂਡ ਵਾਚ ਵਾਲੀ ਗੇਮ ਕਾਂਗਰਸ ਨੇ ਪਲੇ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ ਵੈਨ ਇਟ ਕਮਸ ਟੂ ਪੰਜਾਬ। ਸੋ ਦੇ ਹੈਵ ਆਲਵੇਜ਼, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਦ ਮੋਸਟ ਡਿਸਟਰਬਡ ਪੀਰੀਅਡ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਅਗਰ ਗੱਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਰੀਏ ਪੰਜਾਬ 'ਚ, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ 80s ਵਾਲਾ ਪੀਰੀਅਡ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਉਹ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਵਾਲਾ ਪੀਰੀਅਡ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਕਾਂਗਰਸ ਇਜ਼ ਆਲਵੇਜ਼ ਹੈਡ ਦ ਟੌਪ ਕਰੀਮ ਲੇਅਰ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੀ ਸੀ, ਜਿੰਨੇ ਵੀ ਬਿਊਰੋਕ੍ਰੇਸੀ ਆ, ਜਿੰਨੇ ਵੀ ਲਾਇਲਿਸਟ ਨੇ ਕਾਂਗਰਸ ਦੇ, ਜਾਂ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਵੀ ਪੀਪਲ ਹੂ ਟੌਪ ਕਲਾਸ ਕਰੀਮ ਆਫ ਦ ਸੋਸਾਇਟੀ, MLAs ਹੋਣ ਜਾਂ ਬਾਕੀ ਲੋਕੀ ਹੋਣ। So they were always sided with the Congress because of the perks that Congress offered in the turmoil period, and it's very important to understand for a lot of Panthik people and a lot of Sikhs too, to understand this, that Congress was also hand in glove with a lot of Panthik agencies and Panthik groups as well. So Panthik vote ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹ ਕਾਂਗਰਸ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਸੀ, but it was not whole ਪੂਰੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਸੀ, but Panthik groups, ਕੁਝ ਪੰਥਕ ਗਰੁੱਪਸ ਵੀ ਐਸੇ ਸੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਾਂਗਰਸ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਹੋਏ ਸੀ, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਦਲ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਹੋਏ ਉਸ ਟਾਈਮ ਦਾ ਜਾਂ ਹੋਰ ਬਾਕੀ ਗਰੁੱਪਸ ਹੋਣ, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਡਿਮਾਂਡ ਇਹੀ ਰਹਿੰਦੀ ਸੀ ਜਾਂ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਟ੍ਰੈਟੇਜੀਜ਼ ਇਹੀ ਰਹਿੰਦੀ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਅਕਾਲੀਆਂ ਦਾ ਵੋਟ ਬੈਂਕ ਕੈਂਸਲ ਕਰੋ। ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਅਕਾਲੀਜ਼ ਉਸ ਟਾਈਮ ਦੇ, ਅਗਰ ਇਫ ਯੂ ਕੰਪੇਅਰ ਦ ਅਕਾਲੀਜ਼ ਆਫ ਦੈਟ ਟਾਈਮ ਟੂ ਅਕਾਲੀਜ਼ ਆਫ ਟੁਡੇ ਆਰ ਹਾਈਲੀ, you would say, corrupt, and they've been using Sikh institutions and whatnot. But if you compare it to the past, maybe 80s and 70s, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਕਿ ਅਕਾਲੀਜ਼ ਉਸ time they were genuinely Panthik. At some point they were genuinely Panthik, and this was not really okay with Congress. So Congress played every game it could to get back the Panthik votes. For example, Congress even organized one of the Sarbat Khalsas, immediately after Operation Blue Star, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਰਬਤ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਸੀ, that was organized, a lot of people don't know this, but that was organized by Congress. So ਪਹਿਲਾ ਪੈਰਲਲ ਜਥੇਦਾਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਅਕਾਲ ਤਖਤ ਦੇ opposite ਖੜਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਸੀ, ਉਹ ਕਾਂਗਰਸ ਨੇ ਖੜਾ ਕਰਵਾਇਆ ਸੀ, so a lot of people don't know this, and they're like, we don't, ਅਸੀਂ SGPC ਦੇ ਜਥੇਦਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਮੰਨਦੇ, but they don't know the history that ਜਿਹੜੇ ਜਥੇਦਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮੰਨਦੇ ਹੋ, ਉਹਦਾ ਸ਼ੁਰੂਆਤ ਕਿੱਥੋਂ ਹੋਈ ਸੀ, ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਕਾਂਗਰਸ ਵਾਲਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਖੜੇ ਕੀਤੇ ਸੀ। ਨੋ ਮੈਟਰ, ਉਹ ਵੀ ਲੇਟਰ ਕਾਂਗਰਸ ਤੋਂ ਅਲੱਗ ਹੋ ਗਏ, ਉਹ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਪੰਥਕ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਆਪਣੇ SGPC ਵਾਲਿਆਂ ਤੋਂ, ਬਟ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਸ਼ੁਰੂਆਤ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੋਈ ਸੀ, that was not Panthik at all, that was to dilute the Akali vote. So Congress was always in a tussle with the Panthik vote. ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ Panthik vote ਲੈਣੀ ਸੀ ਕਿਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਨਾਲ, ਚਾਹੇ ਹੁੱਕ ਹੋਏ ਚਾਹੇ crook ਹੋਏ, whether it includes ਗਿਆਨੀ ਜ਼ੈਲ ਸਿੰਘ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਮੀਟਿੰਗਸ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੋਟਲ 'ਚ ਕਰਵਾਉਂਦੇ ਸੀ, whether his meetings with Sant Ji, whether his meetings with whether his bailing out Sant Ji mysteriously, making Sant Ji reach his village mysteriously. So a lot of things in there, because it's not binary at all. So Congress did play a lot of games to get the Panthik votes. Hindu vote ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸੀ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੀ, obviously ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਸੂਬਾ ਤੋਂ ਗੁੱਸਾ ਸੀ, ਲੋਕੀ ਹਿੰਦੂ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸੀ, their vote always went to Congress. ਅਗਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਲਾਇਲਿਸਟ ਦੇਖ ਲਓ, ਆਪਣੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸੁਨੀਲ ਜਾਖੜ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਫਾਦਰ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵੀ ਸੀ, He was a strong opponent of Punjabi Suba, and he said that if need be, we will speak Hindi and we will always speak Hindi and not utter a word of Punjabi. So all these people were staunch loyalists of Congress, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੂੰ but a reactionary see Congress ਦੀ ਜਿੰਨੀ vote see that was always reactionary, and that's why Congress always had to be on its feet in Punjab. Unlike Akalis, Congress vote bank was not as diverse, but their vote bank definitely was the Hindus and the Panthik people, which they obviously created. The monsters they created, they were their vote banks. Division ਤੋਂ ਜਿੰਨਾ ਕਾਂਗਰਸ ਦਾ ਵੋਟ ਬੈਂਕ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾਤਰ ਡਾਇਲੂਸ਼ਨ ਸੀ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਮੇਨ ਕੰਸਰਨ ਆਈ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਅਕਾਲੀਆਂ ਦੀ ਵੋਟ ਡਾਇਲੂਟ ਹੀ ਕੀਤੇ ਜਾਏ ਤੇ ਬਾਕੀ ਜੋ ਬਚ ਜਾਏਗੀ ਉਹ ਆਪਣੀ ਵੋਟ ਹੋਏਗੀ. ਸੋ ਐਂਡ ਦਿਸ ਵਰਕਡ ਬਿਕਾਜ਼ ਇਹ ਜਦੋਂ ਕੰਮ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦਾ ਸੀ ਉਦੋਂ ਐਮਰਜੈਂਸੀ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਸੀ ਜਾਂ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨਸ ਡਿਲੇ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਸੀ. ਯਾ
ਤੇ ਇਹ ਬੜੇ ਸੋਹਣਾ ਪਿਕਚਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪੇਂਟ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ ਫॉर द 70s 80s and major part of 90s as well, and then came the era of the 2000 ਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਹੁਣ 2010 ਤੋਂ 2020 ਤੱਕ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਸਿੱਖ ਜੱਟ ਫੇਸਿਸ ਵੀ ਆਏ ਆ ਕਾਂਗਰਸ ਦੇ ਅੱਗੇ, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਰਜਿੰਦਰ ਪੱਠਲ ਮੈਮ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਤੇ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਕੈਪਟਨ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਹੋ ਗਏ, ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਵੋਟ ਬੈਂਕ ਫਿਰ ਚੇਂਜ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਕੈਪਟਨ ਵਾਸ ਸਮਬਡੀ ਹੂ ਕੇਮ ਇਨ ਐਂਡ ਹੀ ਹੈਡ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਬੈਕਗਰਾਉਂਡ ਐਂਡ ਹੀ ਕੇਮ ਇਨ ਐਂਡ ਹੀ ਟਾਕਡ ਅਬਾਊਟ ਦ ਫਾਰਮਰਸ, ਪਹਿਲੀ ਵਾਰ SYL ਦਾ ਮੁੱਦਾ ਚੱਕਿਆ ਐਂਡ ਹੀ ਸਟੂਡ ਵਿਦ them, ਤੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਅਕਾਲੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਥੋੜੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਸੱਟ ਵੱਜੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਿੱਖ ਰੂਰਲ ਵੋਟ 'ਚ, ਤੇ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਕੈਪਟਨ ਸਡਨਲੀ ਬਿਕੇਮ देयर ਸੇਵੀਅਰ, ਤੇ ਉਦੋਂ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਫਿਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਵੋਟ ਬੈਂਕ ਡਾਇਵਰਸੀਫਾਈ ਹੋਣਾ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋਇਆ. ਐਂਡ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਅੱਜ ਖੜੇ ਹਾਂ ਵੀ ਟੋਟਲੀ ਸੀ ਕਿ देयर आर ਵਿਲੇजेस ਜਿਹੜੇ ਟੋਟਲੀ ਕਾਂਗਰਸ ਵਿਲੇजेस ਹੋ ਚੁੱਕੇ ਐਂਡ ਦੇ ਹੈਵ ਅ ਵੈਰੀ ਹਾਈ ਪਰਸੈਂਟੇਜ ਪੋਪੂਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਆਫ ਸਿੱਖਸ, ਐਂਡ ਦੈਨ ਆਫ ਕੋਰਸ देयर आर ਵਿਲੇजेस ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬੜੀ ਕਲੀਅਰਲੀ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਵਿਲੇजेस ਹੈ. ਸੋ ਡਾਇਵਰਸੀਫਿਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੁਣ ਇਵੇਂ ਦੀ ਉਸ ਤੇ ਆ ਗਿਆ ਕਿ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਔਖਾ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਬਲਾਕ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹ ਹਿੰਦੂ ਬਲਾਕ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਸਿੱਖ ਬਲਾਕ ਹੈ ਇਸੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਵੋਟ ਕਰਦਾ.
Definitely. Yeah, I think you raised a very important point about captains' emergence in Congress in the normal Punjab, in the normalcy. During 90s to baad 1992 to baad the Punjab ch. So captain was a direct challenge to Akalis, and captain has always been a direct challenge. Agar ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ statement ਪਰਸੋਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ resignation ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਵੀ ਸੁਣੀ ਹੋਏਗੀ, one of the questions on which he was very clear, and very clear and very reactionary, you would say, will you join Akalis? And he said, no, never. Never was the word. He used the never. So captain was something that gave Congress ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਬੂਸਟ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਸੀ ਜੱਟ ਸਿੱਖ ਵਾਲਾ ਜਾਂ ਪੰਜਾਬ 'ਚ ਉਹ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਟੱਚ, ਬਟ from the Congress side, without fuming and without creating riots and without creating killings and without doing anything. Congress used captain, someone who was in the Sikh movement all along and knew everything. He knew the nuances of everything. How do Akali brain work? ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਸੀ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਸ਼ ਸਿੰਘ ਬਾਦਲ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਨੇ, because he's been with the man. So a very important ਇੱਕ asset ਸੀ ਕਾਂਗਰਸ ਦਾ ਕੈਪਟਨ ਅਮਰਿੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ, which obviously we'll discuss in the later part, but great point there.
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਤੇ ਆਈ ਥਿੰਕ ਹਿਸਟੋਰੀਕਲ ਪਰਸਪੈਕਟਿਵ ਨੂੰ ਦੇ ਪੂਰੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਪਾਰਟ ਆਫ ਦੀ ਪੋਡਕਾਸਟ ਨੂੰ ਜੇ ਸਮਰਾਈਜ਼ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੋਏ ਤਾਂ ਮੇਬੀ we can't do it without maybe briefly talking about Anandpur resolution and how that was a big turning point. ਜਿਹੜਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਵੀ ਲੋਂਗੋਵਾਲ ਅਕੋਰਡ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ and how it led to the ਲੋਂਗੋਵਾਲ accord. ਤੇ what was Anandpur resolution? Why did people want it? Why was there a certain section of Punjab that wanted it, and how did it shape the politics?
So whenever we talk about Punjab politics, or whenever we talk about Punjab, Anandpur Sahib resolution is something that is always talked about. Anandpur Sahib resolution, when it first came out from Ludhiana, everybody was, it was not a simple plain document. It was a 45 pointer, which went on a lot of amendments from time to time. The latest amendment that I personally consider as a valid one was Sardar Kapoor Singh ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ amendment ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ. But Anandpur Sahib resolution shaped the Punjab politics and Punjab political spectrum ਜਿੰਨਾ ਹੀ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਦਾ ਸੀ ਜਾਂ ਪੰਥਿਕ ਵੋਟਸ ਜਿਸ ਤਰਫ ਹੀ ਜਾਣੀਆਂ ਸੀ. Anandpur Sahib resolutions demands ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਸੀ they were not you would say ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਿ ਸੈਂਟਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਦੀ ਸੀ ਉਸ ਟਾਈਮ ਤੇ, yeah, even today, what they consider this document to be very secessionist document. It was never a
Yes.
secessionist document,
Hanji.
and it is very important for all the parties to talk about it. It's worth mentioning here that Akali Dal Badal, apni jehdi hai Shromani Akali Dal Badal, it operates with two constitutions in place. It has a dual constitution for which even a case is going on against it. Because if you have two constitutions, you cannot fight elections. You either fight elections or you do the Gurdwara stuff. So that's the rule. शायद ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਵੀ ਹੋਏਗਾ, a lot of our audience might not know that DSGMC had to change its logo from so they had to change the logo because this was the case ki same party cannot be in the political, cannot obey the constitution of India and at the same time have its own constitution. So Shromani Akali Dal has a dual constitution. In its one constitution is purely Pandit and the other constitution is a secular one which is it has adopted to fight the elections in Indian political spectrum. So ਅਗਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਅਨੰਦਪੁਰ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਰੈਜ਼ੋਲੂਸ਼ਨ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰੀਏ ਤਾਂ ਪਹਿਲੀ ਕਨਸਟੀਟਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਪੰਥਕ ਵਾਲੀ, they have some of the demands of the Anandpur Sahib resolution written in it. They haven't clearly taken up the document in it, but they have some of the demands taken up in this resolution. The only party, ਅਗਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਅਨੰਦਪੁਰ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਰੈਜ਼ੋਲੂਸ਼ਨ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਪੋਲੀਟਿਕਸ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਪੋਲੀਟੀਕਲ ਸਪੈਕਟਰਮ ਦੇ ਜਾਂ ਪੋਲੀਟਿਕਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ, ਸੋ ਜਸਟ ਇਟਸ ਵੈਰੀ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਟੂ ਅੰਡਰਸਟੈਂਡ ਕਿ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੀ, ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟ ਡਾਕੂਮੈਂਟ ਨੂੰ ਅਡਾਪਟ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ. The document was never directly adopted. Now I'm just trying to create a scenario here in our minds. So you have to imagine a time when there are Panthik groups which you can classify as, put them under the heading of radicals, and then we have the Panthik groups which are who are the fighting, who are the youth with the guns and everything, and I would like you to put them under the heading of extremists. These are the only two sections in the Panthik circles of Punjab from 1979 to 1992, you can say. ठीक है, ਜਿਹੜੇ की implementation of Anandpur Sahib resolution ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੀ ਸੀ as like word to word, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਿ document ਹੈ, they wanted the implementation of this document word to word. And any leader, now you have put the two tabs, we have put the extremists and we have put the radicals. We have Amaan, we have AISSF. These are the people who would do speeches and do everything, but they would not go all guns blazing. Now we had the moderates as well, which included the Longowal, which included the Tohra, which included Talwandi. These are the people who obviously could not tell these Panthik groups ki no, we are not going to fulfill this Anandpur Sahib resolution. So what they did was simple subtle ji changes. Agar tusi dekh lo, instead of using Khalistan in their declarations, they used Sikh land, or they used space for Sikhs in India, within India, under the Constitution of India, where we have our separate communication, but within the Union of India. So Anandpur Sahib resolution got diluted because of the internal conflict of the Sikhs and the Panthik groups. Because radicals and the extremists, militants कह लिए, they always maintained a tooth and nail implementation of the Anandpur Sahib resolution, which didn't really ask for much, क्योंकि having relaying Gurbani was not much of a ask. Having Ludhiana as an industrial center was not much of a ask. Holy city status for Amritsar was not really a big ask at all. And SYL hove, Chandigarh, returning Chandigarh, and the Punjabi speaking villages back to Punjab. These were not really big things that Anandpur Sahib resolution asked.
ਬੜੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਮਝਾਇਆ ਕਿ how did it get diluted, ਕਿਹੜੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਸੀਗੀਆਂ at play. And I think one of the pointers was also, because I was reading it was also prosperity of farmers. ਤੇ ਉਹ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਸੋਹਣਾ ਟੁਕਦਾ ਹੈ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦਾ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਡਾ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਚੱਲ ਰਿਹਾ farmers protest ਨਾਲ. That's just amazingly relatable to it. So nice. I think ਆਪਣਾ ਪਹਿਲਾ part podcast ਦਾ ਇੱਥੇ ਖਤਮ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ, and then we'll take a breather, and then we'll start with the second part, which would talk more about the current state of politics. ਜਿਹੜੀ election ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੀ ਹੈ ਉਸ 'ਚ parties ਕਿਵੇਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੀਆਂ, ਕੀ ਕਰ ਰਹੀਆਂ, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੈ सारा कुछ की होगा. So that's what the second part would be about. So yeah, taking a pause here. Okay, so the issue two, the second part of the podcast, it's about the politics right now, the upcoming election in February 2022. So, of course, as we all know, 117 constituencies, 117 ਸੀਟਾਂ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਲਈ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਮੇਜਰ ਪਾਰਟੀਆਂ ਲੜ ਰਹੀਆਂ. ਤੇ ਜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਡੈਮੋਗ੍ਰਾਫਿਕਸ ਦੇਖੀਏ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੀਆਂ ਤਾਂ ਅਰਾਊਂਡ 56 to 57% ਆਪਣੀ ਸਿੱਖ ਪਾਪੂਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ. ਬਾਕੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਮੇਜਰਲੀ ਹਿੰਦੂ ਪਾਪੂਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ. ਵੈਰੀ ਟਾਈਨੀ ਪਾਪੂਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਆਫ ਮੁਸਲਿਮਸ ਐਂਡ ਕ੍ਰਿਸਚੀਅਨਸ. ਐਂਡ ਵਿਦ ਇਨ ਦ ਸਿੱਖਸ ਤੇ ਹਿੰਦੂਸ ਜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਦੇਖੀਏ ਤਾਂ ਅਰਾਊਂਡ 31-32% ਆਪਣੀ SC ST ਪਾਪੂਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ. ਸੋ ਇਟ ਬਿਕਮਸ ਵੈਰੀ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਕਿ ਕਿਹੜੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਦੀ ਪਾਲਿਸੀਜ਼ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਦੇ ਮੈਨੀਫੈਸਟੋਸ ਕੱਢਦੀ ਹੈ. ਬਿਕਾਜ਼ ਐਜ਼ ਵੀ ਬੋਥ ਡਿਸਕਸਡ ਅਮਾਨ ਕਿ ਹੁਣ ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਟਾਈਮ ਰਹਿ ਨਹੀਂ ਗਏ ਕਿ ਜੀ ਪਤਾ ਹੀ ਹੈ 37% ਹਿੰਦੂ ਨੇ ਕਿੱਧਰ ਵੋਟ ਪਾਉਣੀ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ 50% ਸਿੱਖ ਨੇ ਕਿੱਧਰ ਵੋਟ ਪਾਉਣੀ ਹੈ. So every party, be it the Congress, be it the Akalis, be it the Aam Aadmi Party, they are fighting for each part of that. So just to give a high level overview, ਆਪ ਵਾਲੇ ਆਲਰੇਡੀ ਕਹਿ ਚੁੱਕੇ हैं कि ਸਾਡਾ डिप्टी CM would be a Dalit. ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਵਾਲੇ ਸੇਮ ਕਹਿ ਚੁੱਕੇ हैं. ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਨੇ ਤਾਂ ਐਕਚੁਅਲੀ ਐਜ਼ ਯੂ ਐਕਸਪਲੇਨਡ ਇਨ ਦੀ ਫਰਸਟ ਪਾਰਟ ਆਫ ਦੀ ਪੋਡਕਾਸਟ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਤਾਂ BSP ਨਾਲ ਅਲਾਈਅੰਸ ਕਰ ਲਿਆ ਐਂਡ ਦੇਵ made a nice seat sharing arrangement ਜਿੱਥੇ 97 ਤੇ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਵਾਲੇ ਲੜਨਗੇ and 20 ਤੇ BSP. And then Congress ਨੇ of course played a bigger trump card ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਖਰੀ 4 ਮਹੀਨੇ ਰਹਿ ਗਏ they've actually made a Dalit Sikh CM. So demographics play ਚ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਹੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ let's talk about what each party is doing right now and how they stand. So let's maybe start with Akali Dal to begin with. So that is a party just at least CM Chehra is clear. We know Sukhbir Singh Badal would be the CM candidate, is the CM candidate. ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇੰਟਰਸਟਿੰਗ ਚੀਜ਼ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਆਫ ਕੋਰਸ ਕਿ unlike the past many elections they no longer are in alliance with BJP, they are in alliance with BSP. And the second interesting part is that they seem to be at loggerheads with the farmers ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਕਾਫੀ ਸੋਲਿਡ ਵੋਟ ਬੈਂਕ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਸੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਰੂਰਲ ਪੰਜਾਬ 'ਚ. ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਲੌਗਰ ਹੈਡਸ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਉਹ ਵੀ gotten to see that from last year ਜਦੋਂ farm laws pass ਹੋਏ and Harsimrat Badal and Bikram Majeethia, they were MPs, part of the NDA government. ਤੇ Harsimrat madam ਤਾਂ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਵੀ ਸੀਗੇ and then they kept on supporting it till a point ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਕਿ farmers are really annoyed and they took big steps. They left their ministership, they broke the alliance. It was a big deal and I think they expected the farmers to side with them, and unlike their expectations or opposite to their expectations, it didn't happen. And how I say that with conviction is just ਪਿੱਛੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆਪਣੀ September beginning ਚ ਮੋਗੇ ਚ ਰੈਲੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਸੁਖਬੀਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਬਾਦਲ ਤੇ how farmers came and opposed it and how it came out to be such a big clash between the Akali workers, the farmers and the police. ਕਿੰਨੇ ਆਪਣੇ I think 50 to 60 farmers got injured. ਕਿੰਨਿਆਂ ਤੇ ਪਰਚੇ ਹੋ ਗਏ. It was a big deal and it came out in the open ਕਿ farmers ਕਿੰਨਾ ਹੀ against ਚੱਲ ਰਹੇ ਹਜੇ ਵੀ Badals they even after they've quote unquote sacrificed their ministerships and other things and their big alliance for this particular issue. So ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇਸ issue ਤੇ ਕੀ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ why do you think farmers or if I should be honest, farmer unions at least are against Akali Dal if not farmers per se, ਤੇ ਕੀ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ animosity ਹੈ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ is it really about the farm laws as they stand today?
No, it is about the farm laws. You have to understand. ਜਿਹੜੀ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਹੈ, it controls the Sikh institution of SGPC as well. So Akal Takht has been always against RSS, whether it's been controlled by Badals or whether it's been controlled by anyone else. Akal Takht has always maintained a unanimous stand against RSS and any such infiltration into Sikh organizations. So ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ factor ਹੈ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦਾ, they have always had a softer side, the Panthik circles and the farmers, I'm saying, they have had a softer side for Akali Dal, just because of its they will at least protect the thing. They'll protect the dharam. They will they will guard the dharam. So that notion has always been there, even though everybody knows that Sukhbir Badal is not as Panthik. He is not even Amritari vi nahi hai sahi tarah naal. ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਿ Prakash Singh Badal ਸੀ. Prakash Singh Badal went in jail many times, even though he did what every politician of that time did, which was selling out. But he definitely was not. He definitely was a really Panthik banda. But you have to understand your farmers वाला question ਆ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ, if I go a little further, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਟਵੀਟ ਵੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਸੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ, ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਲੌਂਗੋਵਾਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸੀ, ਚਾਹੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਟ੍ਰੇਸਿਸ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਕਰ ਲਓ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਬਾਦਲ ਦੇ, ਤਾਂ ਬਾਦਲ ਵਾਲੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਨੂੰ ਲੌਂਗੋਵਾਲ ਦੇ ਹੀ ਮੰਨਦੇ ਨੇ, ਦੇ ਸੈਲੀਬ੍ਰੇਟ ਹਿਜ਼ ਐਨੀਵਰਸਰੀਜ਼ ਐਂਡ ਐਵਰੀਥਿੰਗ। ਲੇਕਿਨ ਅਗਰ ਸੋ ਯੂ ਹੈਵ ਟੂ ਅੰਡਰਸਟੈਂਡ ਕਿ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਲੌਂਗੋਵਾਲ led farmer unions. He talked, Longowal addressed the farmer unions. So Chandigarh ਚ ਧਰਨੇ ਚ ਬੈਠੇ ਸੀ Operation Blue Star ਤੋਂ ਮਹੀਨਾ ਪਹਿਲੇ, in May 1984, the farmer unions, including the current BKU, अपने Rajewal Saab wali, Rajewal was there. Everybody was sitting there with Longowal, and Longowal was addressing the unions. And Prakash Singh Badal, you can find pictures of, if you look at the old news cuttings, you will find pictures of Prakash Singh Badal with many former unions. चाहे वो अजमेर सिंह वाली होवे, चाहे वो राजेवाल वाली होन, even though Joginder Singh Ograhan's former union has been closely tied up with the CPI and all those institutions and all those organizations. But most of the farmer organizations in the past have belonged to Akali Dal, and that's why Akali Dal boasts itself कि ਅਸੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਆ। You can hear Sukhbir Badal in almost every speech ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ। So it's a big dent, as you're saying, it's a big dent on them ਕਿ ਉਹੀ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਨੇ ਅੱਜ।
That's exactly what I wanted our audience to know. ਕਿ that's why ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹ current ਦਾ scenario ਹੈ, ਜਿਹੜੀ election ਆ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ, it is way different for each party, and especially for Akali Dal. So of course that we talked about that Moga rally ਜਿੱਥੇ ਦਾ commotion ਹੋਇਆ, ਤਾਂ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਫਿਰ of course Akali Dal did a smart thing. So this is from the first week, but then mid-September, I think September 17th to be specific, they had that Delhi Bandh organized कि ਆਪਾਂ ਦਿੱਲੀ ਬੰਦ ਕਰਨੀ ਹੈ, and it was a big deal ਕਿ ਜਿੰਨਾ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਤੋਂ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਦਲ ਦਾ ਵਰਕਰ ਗਿਆ ਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਜਿੰਨਾ ਦਿੱਲੀ 'ਚ ਵੀ ਇਕੱਠਾ ਹੋਇਆ, and how they actually managed to block such major routes in Delhi, and how they actually got arrested. Both Sukhbir Badal and Harsimrat Badal were detained by the Delhi police. ਤੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਬੜੀ ਇੰਟਰਸਟਿੰਗ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਹੋਈਆਂ। Of course, they were going from Punjab, that they had to pass Haryana, ਤੇ ਫਿਰ border ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਰੋਕਿਆ ਗਿਆ, and then they were able to go, but then other Sikhs with Punjab nameplates and their cars and their jeeps, they were stopped at the Delhi-Haryana border. I think that became a big deal, and suddenly people from within Delhi who were Sikhs, who have offices across the border, chahe Yamuna side to udron, everybody was being stopped just because of they were wearing a turban. So I think that became a big deal, but that also reminded everybody of the 1980s suddenly, kyunki jadon 1982 ਚ ਸੀਗੀਆਂ ਜਦੋਂ Asian Games, ਤੇ of course Dharam Yudh Morcha was at its peak then. People wanted to protest, just like farmers want to protest now in Delhi. People wanted from Punjab to protest in Delhi, and they were moving from Punjab to Delhi in big groups, be it tractors, the Horate, and then the Haryana CM Bhajan Lal, he stopped them. So I think ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਪੈਰਲਲਸ ਡਰਾ ਕੀਤੇ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਸਰਕਾਰਾਂ ਬਦਲ ਜਾਂਦੀਆਂ, ਟਾਈਮ ਬਦਲ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ, ਕਾਂਗਰਸ ਸੀਗੀ ਉਦੋਂ, ਹੁਣ ਬੀਜੇਪੀ ਹੈ, but everything that's happening with Sikhs now has happened 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. ਤੇ ਬੜੀ ਇੰਟਰਸਟਿੰਗ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਉਦੋਂ ਰੋਕੇ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਤਾਂ one of the party that was stopped was the then Maharani of Patiala and her son, who was Amrinder Singh back then, and they were also stopped. So ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਸੋਹਣਾ ਕਨੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਸੋਹਣਾ ਆਪਾਂ ਇਸ ਲਈ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇਟਸ ਬਿਊਟੀਫੁਲ ਟੂ ਜਸਟ ਮੇਕ ਦੈਟ ਕਨੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਬਟ ਇਟਸ ਅਨਫੋਰਚੂਨੇਟ ਕਿ ਕੁਝ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਚੇਂਜ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਇਆ ਲੱਗਦਾ be with time or be with different parties. So yeah, Akali Dal interesting times hai. New alliance, new kind of dent in their um, ਵੋਟ ਬੈਂਕ ਬਟ ਆਲਸੋ ਆਫ ਕੋਰਸ ਐਂਟੀ ਇਨਕੰਬੈਂਸੀ ਤਾਂ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਐਂਡ ਪੰਜਾਬ 'ਚ ਕਾਫੀ ਦੇਰ ਤੋਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਕਾਂਗਰਸ ਸੋ ਦੇ ਡੂ ਸਟਿਲ ਫੀਲ ਕੌਨਫੀਡੈਂਟ they do still feel that they'll at least win more seats than last time. I think that is something that is in their head. Next ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜੀ ਆਮ ਆਦਮੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੀ of course a newer party, not necessarily the newest, but at least new, especially in relation to how old Congress and Akali Dal is with respect to Punjab. ਤੇ ਆਪ ਆਪ ਦੀ ਜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰੀਏ ਤੇ ਜੇ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾ ਇਨਪੁਟ ਲੈਣਾ ਹੋਏ ਫਰੋਮ ਦ ਹਿਸਟੋਰੀਕਲ ਪਰਸਪੈਕਟਿਵ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਹੋਰ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਨਾਲ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੰਪੇਅਰ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਕਿ ਇਵੇਂ ਦੀ ਪਾਰਟੀਆਂ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਤੇ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸੱਚੀ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਕਿ this is a different party and it has actually made a position for itself in Punjab politics.
So you see, there's Punjab is a little different territory. चाहे to see, if you know, Aam Aadmi Party is contesting in Goa, or if it's contesting in, let's say, any other state, Punjab, Assam, West Bengal, Kashmir, these territories are very different. You have to understand that these territories are these are the places where ethno-nationalism persists. It's in the DNA. It will always be there. You know, the regional love is there. The urge to protect the territory, urge to protect the land is there. You know, an urge to protect and safeguard the culture is there. So one of the only factors, you know, which I've talked to a lot of AAP people, and the only factor that could go against AAP is. It's not from Punjab. The party is not from Punjab, and it is from Delhi's. It's a Delhi's party which has ambiguous stance on certain matters. चाहे वो पंजाब दा मैटर होवे जिवें रीजनल मैटर है SYL दा, which is हले तो छोटा मैटर लग रहा है, but it could well become bigger than farmers' protest. You know, if someone wants it, you know, I'm not hinting towards that side, but if Akalis want to mobilize, you know, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਅਕਾਲੀਜ਼ could block Delhi. ਉਹ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ, if memory serves me correctly, before farmers had reached Delhi, Akali Dal marched to Chandigarh governor's house and they quoted arrest, and 3 lakh Akali workers went there, you know. This could go against Aam Aadmi Party, their ambiguous stance on SYL Chandigarh, their stance on Punjab thermal plants, because Arvind Kejriwal ने एक statement ਦਿੱਤੀ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ thermal plant ਬੰਦ ਕਰ ਦੋ, and this statement came at a time when Punjab was suffering from, you know, ਬਿਜਲੀ ਦੇ ਕੱਟਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਸਫਰ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਉਸ ਟਾਈਮ ਤੇ, and there was a lot of other ambiguous statements ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਲੀਡਰ ਫਿਰ ਆਪਣੀ statements ਵਾਪਸ ਲੈ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਨੇ. They've talked about butchers of Sikhs that know these were the saviors of Punjab, and then he retracted his statement, obviously, and a lot of other hiccups as well. ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ they have the leadership problem, but for me majorly the leadership problem and everything else is internal problem, but for me majorly the thing is Punjab of today might vote these people in because of 2 factors. One, it's a normalcy. Punjab, there's nothing new, there's nothing wrong happening, contrary to what Captain has always spoken, that Punjab is under threat, but Punjab is really normal. So in very normal Punjab, people might vote up in because of the two monopoly, you know, paddy rice ਜਿਹੜਾ ਚੱਲ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਕਾਂਗਰਸ, we call it paddy rice. ਚਾਹੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪੰਜਾਬ 'ਚ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਦੇਖ ਲਓ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਇਹੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਆਪਣੇ ਮੋਨੋਕਲਚਰ ਕ੍ਰੌਪ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਮੋਨੋਕਲਚਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੋਵਾਂ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਸੀ. ਸੋ ਦੈਟ ਇਜ਼ ਦ ਓਨਲੀ ਫੈਕਟਰ ਇਨ ਪਲੇ. ਅਗਰ ਹਿਸਟੋਰੀਕਲੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੇਖੀਏ ਥਰਡ ਪਾਰਟੀਜ਼ ਨੇ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਪਰਫਾਰਮ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨਸ 'ਚ, ਸੋ ਇਟ ਹੈਜ਼ ਨਾਟ ਰੀਅਲੀ ਬੀਨ, ਯੂ ਨੋ, ਅਪਰੀਸ਼ੀਏਬਲ ਵੋਟ ਗੇਨ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ, ਅਪਰੀਸ਼ੀਏਬਲ ਵੋਟ ਪਰਸੈਂਟੇਜ ਚੇਂਜ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ third parties tha, and when the party is from Delhi, things change a little bit.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल आई थिंक बड़ा बड़ा सोना एक्सप्लेन किया हिस्टोरिकल perspective नाल and why Punjab might reject them and why it might vote them, because Punjab has been known for being maverick in these things. I think when nobody knew up, that's when Punjab gave them 4 MPs, and Punjab cho 4 MP jana is like 30% of their MPs. So suddenly a new party nu to see 30% MP choose kar dena, and that's what Punjab did. And Punjab last time was probably seemingly voting them into power, and then suddenly ਜਦੋਂ election ਨੇੜੇ ਆਏ, their leadership tussle ended up being ਕਿ ਨਾ तो CM face ਨਹੀਂ declare ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ, and one of the thing that played against them and in favor of Captain last time was Captain actually could convince, especially the urban voter of Punjab, that this party is unstable. This party won't be able to give you stability. जिन्होंने CM candidate ही नहीं declare किया, they'll either bring the CM candidate from outside. You'll not get a CM candidate from Punjab, and it is a big deal for Punjab. ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਵਾਰ ਦੀ ਆਪ ਤੋਂ unfortunately or fortunately, depending on whether you the listener is aap supporter or not, same चीज देखने ਨੂੰ मिल रही है कि they are taking their time in the leadership, and there's actually a tussle already. Bhagwant Mann actually wants to be projected as the CM face, and of course Delhi doesn't want it. And why Delhi doesn't want it, that of course is an internal matter, but it it is an important issue for Punjabis to know ਕਿ ਜੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪ ਨੂੰ ਵੋਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਿਹਨੂੰ ਸੀਐਮ ਬਣਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ। ਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਲੈਸਨਸ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਆਫ ਕੋਰਸ ਲਾਸਟ ਟਾਈਮ ਕੱਲੀ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀਗੀ ਦ ਟਿਕਟ ਡਿਸਟ੍ਰੀਬਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਵਾਸ ਆਲਸੋ pretty centralized, everything being decided from Delhi, and unless that changes this time, it might also become an issue at the very end for AAP, just like last time. So of course people are ready to vote, people are ready to give them a chance if they do tick certain things. So it'll be an interesting election for AAP as well. And again, we never know Punjab ਕਿਵੇਂ ਦੀ surprises ਕੱਢ ਕੇ ਦਿੰਦਾ, because we've done it in the past.
Right. I think I'll add something here when it comes to app. So for a common Punjabi, you must have seen a lot of interviews as well. And to all the people I have talked, because the people I talk to are in the urban circles, they're not in the rural circles. And whenever I get to meet people from rural circles, their opinions are different from the urban circles. People in the urban circles, they hold an opinion that Aam Aadmi Party will do something for Punjab, because this is a change. So change is the face. The face is changing. Everything will change. Another important factor that I personally, and I analyze it all the time, Aam Aadmi Party has not faced any of the problem that Punjab's other two parties have faced. Now, if we look at Captain Amrinder Singh the Gutka chuk ke sੌਂ ਖਾਣ ਵਾਲੀ statement ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਰਜ਼ਾ ਖਤਮ ਕਰ ਦੂੰਗਾ ਕਰ ਕਰ ਨੌਕਰੀ ਹੋ ਜੂਗੀ, and he said all these things holding a gutka in his hand. Now when it comes to this man, he obviously did not intend to lie. Let's talk it in good faith here. When someone picks up a gutka and he has a turban on his head, and he's he is a Sikh, he's a practicing Sikh, he doesn't intend to lie. Captain Amrinder Singh did want to do all that, whatever he said. ਫਿਰ time and again ਜਿੰਨੇ ਹੀ statements ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਮਨਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਬਾਦਲ ਦੀ ਹੋਣ ਖਜ਼ਾਨਾ ਖਾਲੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਖਾਲੀ ਆ, so you have to understand ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਿ ਐਗਰੀਕਲਚਰ ਦੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਅਸੀਂ ਅੰਡਰਸਟੈਂਡ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਗ੍ਰਾਸ ਰੂਟ ਚੇਂਜਸ ਚਾਹੀਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ to do something. You can't just give MSP and the Kisan problem will not end with the MSP. It won't. The farmers are in trouble. They're earning 27 rupees. So this is same thing. This erosion has happened with the politics in Punjab as well. The two consecutive parties have just drained Punjab. You have to understand this. Now, even for Aam Aadmi Party to come in power, it will not be easy for Arvind Kejriwal to give jobs to everybody, to give free electricity, to give free water. It won't be easy. So this is what a lot of people and a lot of political thinkers in Punjab say, that ਜਦੋਂ ਖਜ਼ਾਨਾ ਹੀ ਖਾਲੀ ਆ, ਜਦੋਂ ਘਰ ਹੀ ਖਾਲੀ ਆ, ਬਾਹਰਲਾ ਬੰਦਾ ਲੀਡਰਸ਼ਿਪ ਚੇਂਜ ਕਰਕੇ ਕਰੂਗਾ ਕੀ? So this is one of the statement. So it's very important for Aam Aadmi Party to understand this as well, ਕਿ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਗੋਲਡਨ ਬਰਡ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੇਜਰੀਵਾਲ ਨੂੰ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਲੱਗ ਰਹੀ ਹੋਏਗੀ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਉੱਥੇ ਜਾਵਾਂਗਾ ਤਾਂ ਬਸ ਲੀਡਰਸ਼ਿਪ ਦੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਰਹੀ ਆ ਕਾਂਗਰਸ 'ਚ. Every party wants to govern. Now when Congress came to power, it wasn't the corruptest of all. They wanted to govern, they wanted to make things happen. So there have been issues due to the continuous monopoly of these two parties ਕਿ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰ ਭਰੇ ਨੇ, ਆਪਣੇ ਟਰਾਂਸਪੋਰਟ ਦੇ ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸ ਖੜੇ ਕਰਤੇ, ਆਪਣਾ ਡਰਗ ਮਾਫੀਆ ਸਟਾਰਟ ਕਰਤਾ, where common man of Punjab suffered. So to improve the common man's state, some party will have to do something, and people are banking on Kejriwal because Kejriwal has given an illusion, I would say, he has changed lives in Delhi.
Bilkul. I totally agree with your point, and maybe the basis is that even if there's a change in Delhi, just the ground realities of Punjab are so different that if AAP comes to power, they are not playing on the same field that they've played in Delhi. So the way the population is set up in Delhi in terms of the economics, in terms of the trade and business, in terms of basically the resources that that particular part of India has, Punjab is totally different. You are coming into a state with an agrarian economy, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ manufacturing ਪਹਿਲੀ ਗੱਲ ਤਾਂ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਹੀ different ਹੈ ਦਿੱਲੀ ਨਾਲੋਂ ਦੂਜੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਿਸ ਹਾਲਤ 'ਚ ਹੈ and then you are looking at the government jobs and then you're looking at the whole home affairs ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ Delhi 'ਚ you uh, don't have to deal with because it's under the central government and suddenly now you have to deal with. So of course the ground reality is so different that it's not just about the leadership. And ਮੈਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਕਦੇ ਕਦੇ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ that is one of the reason AAP has not been able to set up a leader because um, without going into too much detail, whosoever would be the CM of Punjab, if that person is from AAP, constitutionally, that person would have more power than Arvind Kejriwal has. So that becomes a big deal for the supremo of a party if another person of the party has more power according to the constitution, just because of the status of Punjab as a state versus Delhi as a state. But yeah, of course, interesting times. And then we come to the Congress, in primarily at the last because of the interesting changes ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਿ last few weeks ਹੋਈਆਂ ਪੰਜਾਬ 'ਚ, and major one being the CM being changed just 4 months before the election. And I think, of course, the ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਕਿਤੇ ਸਿਰ ਸਿਹਰਾ ਪਊਗਾ ਇਹਦਾ ਉਹ ਤਾਂ of course ਨਵਜੋਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਿੱਧੂ ਦੇ ਪਊਗਾ, but ਜਿਹੜੇ CM ਬਣੇ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਚੰਨੀ ਜੀ ਬਣੇ ਹੈ, so totally different than what people expected. And I think what has changed in last few weeks ਜਦੋਂ ਤੋਂ ਬਣੇ ਹੈ and ਜਦੋਂ ਤੋਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਸਾਰਾ ਕੁਝ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ is at least I personally am not getting any hints of this person being a makeshift or a stopgap arrangement. I think the way he's conducting himself, the way he's running the business already, and the way he has time and again said in his limited interviews that he's given, he is there for 4 months with a mission. And according to me, that mission is not just to win the election. That mission, according to me, is to stay as the CM. So what I'm seeing, probably foreseeing in Congress, is a big tussle, especially if they win. And I think now Congress is going into this election with not just a view on the traditional Sikh and Hindu vote. They are going with a view on the Dalit vote and how those voters would vote for Channi, only and only considering that this person would stay the CM for the next term as well. ਤੇ the way ਆਪਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਡਿਪਟੀ CM ਬਣਾਏ ਆ, the way ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਹੁਣ ਕੈਬਨਿਟ ਚੁਣਿਆ, it all seems that they are going in where probably somebody has made Sidhu happy, but Sidhu hasn't realized that this is a dangerous situation to be in for personally for him. So what is your view on what's happening in Congress right now?
No, if for me, I'm surprised. I haven't seen a CM in Punjab doing all this. Like I think I posted a status that the pink bollworm is affecting Bathinda farmers, and he was there within an hour. I think he had to be there, and he announced the compensation. No chief minister in Punjab has announced compensation on ground. They've always said we will assess. The man is doing the work that Chief Minister Amrinder Singh should have done. But At the same time, one has to understand, चाहे उन्हों दी cabinet होए, चाहे उन्हों दा DGP होए, because he also belongs to SC community, and in Punjab, चाहे जिवें पता ही होना, there has always been tussle for DGPs. Dinkar Gupta's appointment last time came at cost of Mustafa. Mustafa became gussa ho gayi si fir Dinkar Gupta aaye. So captain has always been pleasing the urban Hindus, the loyalist ones to him, and this has always been the Congress game. But what Chennai seems to be doing is he seems to be empowering his people, which is giving out a good perception, which is not giving out a bad message, contrary to what Indian media and Godi media says, ki Jat Sikh supremacy and everything. It's giving out a good message in Punjab. Everybody is happy and feeling good for Chennai, because Chennai's interview, when he mentions his upbringing and mentions everything, where he got emotional, that resonated with a lot of people, because every Punjabi is the son of soil. Or ground up hi jande ne. No one is born super rich except for few royals like Amrinder Singh. So Chennai is someone who is resonating with the common folks in Punjab, and as Chennai himself said, he is Aam Aadmi that Punjab wants. And yeah, so you have to understand that even though Sidhu might be hugging and dancing right now, this could be trouble. And everybody knows Sidhu is not in to be just the president of Punjab Congress. He wants to be the CM. So for me personally, I want Congress to win and Chennai to be the CM, because this will put Sidhu naked out in front of public.
Yes, yes, I think बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग चीज़ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਦਿੱਲੀ ਨੋਇਡਾ ਸਟੂਡੀਓਜ਼ 'ਚ ਬੈਠੀ ਹੈ I think they were shell shocked first of all when they started hearing the news कि captain is going. According to them, the only person who can save Congress, not just in Punjab but in India, the person was captain. And I think without knowing the ground reality, they were making these statements, and it kind of exposed all of that media, that how ignorant they are on Punjab politics, and probably how ignorant they are on every other state's politics that is not in the cow belt. ਸੋ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਅਸਾਮ ਤੇ ਕਮੈਂਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਕੇਰਲਾ ਤੇ ਕਮੈਂਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ, without now knowing the realities of Kerala, I can confidently say that their commentary on Punjab has convinced me that they know nothing beyond just their few kilometers of their office. So that's something we saw pretty uh, explicitly. And coming back to Congress, I do believe the same. And I feel that Congress right now probably might be in a stronger position than they were a month ago, just because the whole perception of incumbency is probably going away. And that is going away because I'm seeing that in his statements. I'm seeing when you said that Chennai actually went and on the ground ordered and announced compensation, he also said कि ਹੁਣ ਇਹ ਪਿਛਲੀਆਂ ਸਰਕਾਰਾਂ ਵਰਗੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ, ਇਹ ਨਵੀਂ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਹੈ. So you know how when somebody says that somebody gives a perception that I already have a new government, that you'll help me continue for the next 5 years after this election, which is upcoming in 4 months. So ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬੰਦਿਆਂ 'ਚ ਐਂਟੀ ਇਨਕੰਬੈਂਸੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਚੇਂਜ ਕਰਨੀ ਹੈ, this is the ਸਰਕਾਰ change that he's projecting that change to be. So I think that's a smart move. I also feel that probably choosing him and the way he's conducting is going in Congress's favor, but for sure 100% going against Sidhu. And that is not what he wanted, of course, when he forced the high command to let go of captain. So coming back to captain then, I think captain has multiple choices now, and it's interesting that he's actually made it very, very clear that he'll play a part in the upcoming election. And I don't see a way in him playing a part within the Congress. So the only things that are coming to my mind are probably three scenarios. He throws open and has a new party with his loyalists. The second one being he goes to BJP. He joins them. They are not in alliance with anybody. They also need a CM face. And he actually tells them that, man, make me your CM face and announce that you are repealing the three farm laws, and we tell them that captain was the reason we did that, and here I am, and here I am the CM face, so dekho main toda sab to bada issue solve karwata, so now vote for me. And the third one being, which is probably the most unlikely one, but never say never in politics. According to me, the third one is certain farmer unions are looking to enter political spectrum, especially Jeda Apna Gurnam Singh Charuni, the faction, and the others supporting him. And Captain says that, guys, I'm ready to be the force with you. I have my loyalists, I have my voter base. They thought the voter base, the mera voter base milke, we can be the kingmakers. So these are the options that I see. So what is your view on what Captain might be thinking, or what do you think he might do?
Um, See, Captain Amrinder Singh will definitely play a role in the elections because, as far as I have seen his interviews and I've watched his statements ever since he's resigned, he's very clear on one thing, and that thing is that he won't let Navjot Singh Sidhu to be the chief minister of Punjab, and he said he will oppose it no matter what it takes. When he uses no matter what it takes, it could definitely mean that he would field a candidate against him. Now, when we talk of fielding a candidate, he cannot field a candidate by remaining in Congress. So he definitely either creates a new party, which is something that will now depends on the candidate he brings out against Sidhu. Because if he himself contests against Sidhu, that's a clear win for Sidhu because he won't be able to survive now. In the past, he could have defeated Sidhu, but now he won't. So the new party thing, that is definitely on the cards. But another major rumor that's going on in the WhatsApp circles and the Noida media circles is Captain joining BJP. The thing is, it won't be really surprising for anybody because when Captain joined Congress, it disappointed a lot of circles, a lot of Panthik circles, because you understand it this way: for a traditional Akali, now Captain Amrinder Singh is someone who is a traditional Akali. He was a traditional Akali. For a traditional Akali to join Congress and to actually keep the portrait of Rajiv Gandhi in his room, that meant something big for Sikhs, and that was a dent that Sikhs thought, okay, now we know this man. He's no different. So I don't think it will be a major surprise for the Panthik circles and for the Sikhs who are well read about Captain. That if he joins BJP, no one really would be surprised, except for Godi media and the Noida media making it one of the biggest news of the decade that Captain Amrinder Singh joined BJP. But it won't be a big thing. About the repeal of the laws, to be honest, just I think we've completed 10 months, and tomorrow we have Bharat Bandh, 27th of September. But I don't see the laws getting repealed by one person or with the influence of one person. What Narendra Modi's government sees and how Narendra Modi's government sees these laws is very different from what farmer unions are seeing this law. And the protests for 10 months, lakhs of people protesting, the longest protest in the human history, with 600 plus lives gone, is not changing the perception. I don't think BJP would like to change the laws or repeal the laws just to gain some votes in Punjab. Because understand it this way, is tarah samjho. For Punjab, BJP, the major goal is not to win the Punjab elections. They've never won the Punjab elections. ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਹੈ ਇੱਥੇ ਇੱਕ ਸੀਟ ਵੀ ਆ ਜਾਊ ਹੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਆ ਇਸ ਵਾਰੀ ਤਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬੰਦੇ ਵੀ ਹਾਇਰ ਕਰਕੇ ਹੀ ਰੱਖਣੇ ਪੈਣੇ ਆ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਿ municipal elections they hired people. You might see some news clippings, they hired people. So for BJP, the major thing is the parliamentary elections. ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੰਜਾਬ 'ਚੋਂ ਉਹ ਬੰਦੇ ਚਾਹੀਦੇ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ the yes men, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਹਰਸਿਮਰਤ ਬਾਦਲ ਯੈਸ ਮੈਨ ਸੀ, ਯੈਸ ਵੂਮੈਨ ਸੀ, ਹਾਂਜੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੱਥ ਖੜੇ ਕਰਦੇ, ਬਿੱਲ ਪਾਸ ਹੋਣ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਹੱਥ ਖੜੇ ਕਰ ਦੇਵੇ. ਸੋ ਅਗਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ BJP ਦੀ ਸਟ੍ਰੈਟਜੀਜ਼ ਦੇਖੋ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਐਕਸੈਪਟ ਉੱਤਰ ਪ੍ਰਦੇਸ਼ and few other states, or the bigger states which bring major chunk into the parliament, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਵਰਗੀਆਂ ਸਟੇਟਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਸਿਰਫ ਯੈਸਮੈਨ ਚਾਹੀਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪਾਰਲੀਮੈਂਟ 'ਚ ਆ ਕੇ ਬਹਿ ਜਾਣ, ਲਾਅ ਜਦੋਂ ਪਾਸ ਹੋਣ ਲੱਗੇ ਹੱਥ ਖੜਾ ਕਰ ਦੇਣ ਬਸ. So they are not hoping to win the elections. They're not even campaigning for the elections. So for me, the first option about captain joining BJP, he might as well join BJP, but BJP repealing the laws for him, that is not happening.
I think I understand what you're trying to say. You're trying to say that yes, they might gain and they might like captain to join them, but that positive for them is not that big that they'll give up on such a big deal because, as you said, there are multiple reasons why these laws have been framed and what are they trying to get here. And few seats in Punjab's legislative assembly doesn't make a cut for them to give that whole thing up. Yeah, yeah. Looking from BJP's perspective, that totally see बिल्कुल देख सकते हैं कि that's a clear plausibility as to why they would do that. And you brought the farmers' protest while commenting on this, and बिल्कुल जी साल हो गया anniversary है. Um, and I think it's even beyond India. If we see that, of course, Modi visited now US from the 23rd to the 25th September, and he saw a lot of protests against him there. So I think farmers' protest ने पंजाब पॉलिटिक्स ते तो असर पाना ही है क्योंकि Punjabis worldwide have taken this up and they are not giving this up. They are making sure कि जिथे जिथे भी मौका मिलता है चाहे वो मोदी आया चाहे मोदी दी सरकार दा कोई आया है any Indian representative anywhere in the world when he or she is on the public stage or meeting somebody they are facing these protesters everywhere, be it US, be it Canada, UK, everywhere. So it is a big deal. So इस issue ने पंजाब politics ते पंजाब elections ते ता पाਉਣਾ ਹੀ ਹੈ ਜੀ ਫਰਕ ਤੇ I think the last point that I'll like to discuss in our section and for today's podcast is the farmer unions ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੈਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਵੀ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਇਆ ਕਿ most of them have said that no, we are not in this for politics. We are not going to contest, and we don't support anybody else contesting either. We are, on the other hand, actually asking political parties to not campaign at all. ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਵੀ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਕਮਿਸ਼ਨ ਜਦੋਂ ਡੇਟ ਅਨਾਉਂਸ ਕਰੂਗੀ ਤਾਂ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਕੈਂਪੇਨਿੰਗ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰਿਓ ਹਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਸਾਰੀ ਪਾਰਟੀਆਂ ਦਾ ਮੇਨ ਮੋਟਿਵ ਹੋਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਕਰਨਾ ਬਟ ਇੱਕ ਚੀਜ਼ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਕੁਝ ਹਫ਼ਤਿਆਂ 'ਚ ਚੇਂਜ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਗੁਰਨਾਮ ਸਿੰਘ ਚੜੂਨੀ ਨੇ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਹੀ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਲੜਨਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਐਂਡ ਆਈ ਥਿੰਕ ਤਰਨ ਤਾਰਨ 'ਚ ਇੱਕ ਰੈਲੀ 'ਚ ਹੀ ਜੁਆਇਨਡ the stage and hands and basically shared the stage with Lakha Sidana. Lakha Sidana, of course, everybody knows, a gangster turned activist, also contested on People's Party of Punjab ticket, the Batinde constituency uthi, district chot, and he, of course, he lost last time. But I don't see a reason why he won't have the same political ambitions today. And him joining hands with Charuni, sharing the stage and bringing in people and showing ਕਿ ਸਾਡੀ ਰੈਲੀ 'ਚ ਵੀ ਵਾਧੂ ਲੋਕੀ ਆਉਣਗੇ ਹਾਲਾਂਕਿ ਉਹ constituency I think ਵਲਟੋਹਾ ਦੀ ਹੈ so a lot of Akali presence there and they deliberately chose that venue so I believe that something is cooking up somewhere where we might see a party or at least few independents prop up with if not the whole farmer union support, certain farmer union supporting. And of course, we all know Charuni actually Haryana di utho and he's not even from Punjab, but still. So what is your view on this?
I think Gurnaam Singh Chaduni has maintained it a lot of times. He contradicted once when Tribune reported him, and he said that it was misreported that he wants to contest elections. He has met the traders of Punjab a lot of times. He's met the Rice Miller Association people, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਸਾਰੇ traders ne, and everybody has urged him to form a party and fight the elections. Now what is happening within the farmer unions is something that we need to pay attention. The thing is that the Punjab's farmer unions, or let's say the 32 farmer unions that are sitting there, most of them are affiliated with either the Akalis or the Congress. This is something that a lot of people don't talk about. Now when you go and tell Rajewal, Rajewal ji ਤੁਸੀਂ election ਲੜ ਲਓ, But back there now, a lot of people don't understand ki unions bandiyan kiਵੇਂ ne. How is Rajawal a leader of a union? These unions are not democratically elected unions now, because farmers haven't voted these people as the union chiefs. ਜਿੰਨੀਆਂ ਵੀ ਯੂਨੀਅਨਸ ਬਣਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ, these all unions, for example, ਅਗਰ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਐਗਜ਼ਾਮਪਲ ਦੇਣਾ ਚਾਹਾਂ, ਅਜਮੇਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ BKU ਹੈ, BKU ਅਜਮੇਰ. So that is Akali, that's Akali workers. That's a union of Akali workers. Now, what happens is, for example, we are a village of peasants, we village of farmers, and our problems are unresolved. ਸਾਡੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਟਿਊਬਵੈਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ, ਸਾਡੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਸੜਕਾਂ ਖਰਾਬ ਨੇ, ਮੰਡੀ ਦੀ ਹਾਲਤ ਖਰਾਬ ਆ. So all of us, we go to an influential person. We go to an influential person who has a know-how within the party, ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਨੇ. ਅਕਾਲੀਆਂ ਦੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਆ ਪੰਜਾਬ 'ਚ, ਅਕਾਲੀ ਇਸ ਬੰਦੇ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਨੇ, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਅਜਮੇਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਰਾਜੋਵਾਲ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਹੋਰ ਕੋਈ ਆ. I'm just giving you an example. Now this guy, he represents the farmers of his village or of his area. He goes to those people, and then over time he mobilizes these people against other parties based on, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਅਗਰ ਮੈਂ ਅਕਾਲੀ ਹਾਂ, ਮੈਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਤਾ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਰੋਡ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ, ਮੈਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਰੋਡ ਬਣਾਤੇ. Now next time if I tell them to mobilize against someone else, they will. They have to, because I'm doing the work, I'm in power, I'm doing the work. Now unfortunately what has happened in Punjab, that both the parties, Congress and Akalis, they've taken a lot of terms. Akaliyan ne 2 term ਨਾਲ ਨਾਲ ਲੈ ਲਏ, 3 term ਲੈ ਲਏ, Congress ਨੇ ਨਾਲ ਨਾਲ 2 term ਲੈ ਲਏ. When I say ਨਾਲ ਨਾਲ, I mean consecutively. So these bases, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਬੇਸ ਆ, ਫਾਰਮਰਸ ਦੀ ਬੇਸ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਫਾਰਮਰ ਯੂਨੀਅਨਸ ਦੀ ਬੇਸ ਆ, ਇਹ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਆਪਣੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ, ਰਿਸਪੈਕਟਿਵ ਪਾਰਟੀਜ਼ ਨਾਲ ਸਟਰੋਂਗ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਆ. The Akali unions, the unions affiliated to Akali Dal, they strengthen their relationship with Akali Dal. The unions affiliated to Congress, they strengthen their relationship with, and the crossovers also happen. For example, Rajawal used to be good to Akalis, now he's good to Captain. You might have seen pictures of Rajawal with Sumed Saini, Prakash Singh Badal. Then you also see pictures of Rajawal with Captain Amrinder Singh. So because this is liquid, they don't have a written allegiance to any party. ਉਹ ਜਿਹਨੇ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਉਹਦੇ ਹੀ ਹੋ ਗਏ. But in that liquid as well, there is some sort of faithfulness that we won't contest against you. ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਣਾ ਲਾਂਗੇ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਰੋਗੇ. So that is one of the reasons that these unions will not contest elections, ਚਾਹੇ ਕੁਝ ਵੀ ਕਰਵਾ ਲਓ, unless something really miraculous happens. Now what is happening with Gurnaam Singh Chidoni, this is not the structure that operates in Haryana. This structure doesn't operate in Haryana, because Haryana doesn't have the fabric that Punjab has. Punjab has the fabric of Nanakta and Punjabiyat. Haryana doesn't. Haryana has a division. Haryana has the Gujjar division. Haryana has the Jat division. The land is not really owned by anyone except the Jats in Haryana. You see that there is real oppression. But in Punjab, the situation is different, and these unions maintain the fabric. So it's very unlikely for these unions to contest. And I can say it on record here. Let's call it my perception is only that even if Gurnaam Singh Chidoni contests elections, he'll be swallowed up by someone. When I say swallowed up, I mean either the Akalis or the Congress, or even AAP in the future. Because if AAP wins this time, they will also have the unions, attaching to them as a ladder. So this is what happens. This is very important for people to understand. Unions are not some separate entity. They are the parties. They are the offshoots. But does this mean that this is the political protest? No, because they're the farmers sitting there, the leaders. They have had good relations with the parties just to fulfill the needs of the farmers. So this is very, very tricky.
I think you explained it very well, and people, the listeners would now understand ki fark ki hai, and why is there are still, let's say, rumors hi keh lo, chahe jo marji keh lo, why is there still an inclination on Chiduni's side to even think about this, and why others are not even thinking about it? I think that has been explained really well. And of course, people like Lakha Sidana, they don't have a background with farmer unions, so their political ambitions are of course different and will continue to exist. And tomorrow he might fight as an independent, and he probably would need somebody's support if he intends to win. So of course it makes sense for him to join hands. So yeah, of course, that was really good. I think I'm really happy that the issues we covered, we discussed, lots to learn from you, Amaan, and I'm sure our listeners feel the same. So As mentioned in the beginning, this was our introductory episode where we wanted to give a historical perspective of Punjab politics, of Punjab elections. We wanted to discuss the current situation as to how we stand today and how the next 4 months would go and how we foresee them to go. And now going forward, we'll bring in guests from different political parties, different eminent personalities, people who are on the ground, people who matter, people whose voice matters. And that's how we'll take this podcast series forward. Any last words from you, Aman?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think we discussed almost everything from history of Punjab politics to its present. We also try to analyze some parties, all the parties in the details we can, and also try to project what could happen in the elections. And thank you for your insightful points on all the parties and the current scenarios around them. And yes, in as just said, we will be bringing in guests in the future episodes of this podcast. And this will be the podcast that you will need to understand the Punjab elections all through until the elections are around the corner.
Thank you, Ji. Saਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ and see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the first and inaugural episode of the Punjab Power Play with Jazz Oberoi and Amaan Bali. We're obviously very excited about this. There's not many podcasts like this in the Punjabi political ecosystem, and we can only make these with your support. Your subscriptions actually drive our ability to produce these and everything else we do. So if you haven't already, you can head over to baaznews.org/subscribe and pitch in a few bucks. It doesn't cost that much, relatively speaking, and it allows us to continue putting out fearless, independent journalism touching issues that matter to the Sikh and Punjabi population around the world. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this podcast as well as our flagship podcast, the Baaz podcast. I know, not a very creative name, where we talk to different journalists and contributors every other week about their pieces and kind of what's going on in the world, again, that matters to our people. And finally, make sure to leave a review. It helps people find our podcast. It helps with the algorithms on Apple. Just go there, click 5 stars, or 4, or whatever. You know what? You just keep it honest, whatever you feel. Leave a couple of comments. It does help, and it allows us to continue to improve. With that, we'll see you in about 2 weeks. Thanks for listening.